Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into a massive controversy that's practically setting Ghana's digital landscape on fire right now. Over the last few weeks, this fierce debate has absolutely exploded across tech communities. We're seeing intense arguments, a ton of confusion, and at the dead center of it all, a piece of legislation known as the proposed NITA Bill. So we're going to stick strictly to the facts here, break down what this bill actually entails, and figure out exactly why it's triggered such a deeply emotional response from one of Africa's fastest-growing digital ecosystems. Let's get into it.
Now, to understand how insanely fast this escalated, listen to this quote. Imagine going to prison for centering a div without a NIDA license. Now, if you don't code, centering a div is literally one of the most basic, everyday tasks in web design. It's like breathing for developers. But this viral meme, it perfectly captures the localized panic that just swept across platforms like X, WhatsApp, and TikTok. I mean, almost overnight, developers, digital marketers, you name it, were caught up in this huge wave of alarming claims, genuinely wondering if their day-to-day work was suddenly about to become a criminal offense. Crazy, right?
And that brings us right to the core conflict here. Is the proposed NITA Bill a totally necessary regulation for Ghana's maturing digital economy? Or is it, as some claim, a dangerous government overreach? Well, the internet is fiercely divided on this. On one side, proponents are arguing that a maturing tech space absolutely needs standards. It just makes sense. But on the other side, tech enthusiasts, founders, independent creators, they are deeply, deeply worried about what this framework means for their future and, honestly, their fundamental freedom to innovate.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. What is NIDA, the government agency?
So, before we can even begin to unpack the controversy, we really need to understand the agency itself. NIDA. It stands for the National Information Technology Agency. They were established by the Ghanaian government back in 2008, and their fundamental mandate is essentially to regulate and coordinate all the IT systems and the broader digital infrastructure right across the country.
Their core responsibilities? They cover the whole shebang. We're talking digital governance, IT standards, cybersecurity coordination, and rolling out technology policies. Now, as Ghana pushes super heavily toward becoming a fully digitized economy, an agency like NIDA naturally gains a lot more influence, right? They're basically a cornerstone of Ghana's digital transformation. But it is exactly this expanding influence that totally sets the stage for the massive clash we're seeing today.
Moving on to Section 2, Fear of Overregulation, Barrier to Innovation.
So, the outrage really kicked into high gear when a bunch of viral claims started spreading like wildfire online. People were reading that software developers might actually need formal licenses just to work, that ICT professionals would require strict certification, and that operating certain unapproved digital businesses could literally become illegal overnight. And the wildest claim of all, that some violations could actually end you up in prison. I mean, developers were genuinely asking each other online if they could get locked up simply for writing code without government permission. Now, what's really interesting about this is who exactly makes up Ghana's tech ecosystem. We're not just talking about massive corporate tech giants here. No, we're talking about self-taught developers, young freelancers, startup founders grinding out of their bedrooms, and a ton of independent creators. This is a highly informal, totally grassroots community that runs on self-directed learning and side hustles. For this specific demographic, sweeping licensing rules don't just feel like annoying paperwork, they feel like an absolute existential threat to their livelihoods. Because think about it, software development is unique. A student in Kumasi, Accra, Sunyani, or Tamale can literally hop on YouTube, learn how to code, build out entire projects, and start freelancing for international clients without ever stepping foot inside a traditional formal system. It's that classic laptop and a dream reality. The total openness of the internet is exactly what made the tech industry so incredibly attractive to begin with. So naturally, any regulation that threatens to close those doors is going to be met with fierce, fierce resistance. All right, Section 3, NITA's response, setting the record straight. While the agency didn't stay quiet, they released statements firmly rejecting the misinformation that was blowing up on social media. They were quick to point out that, hey, they are not secretly enforcing some unpassed, brand new bill. Actually, scratch that. Their regulatory power is completely grounded in laws that are already currently in force. We're talking about the original NITA Act, the Electronic Transactions Act, and fees and charges regulations that Parliament has already approved. The crucial point really boils down to NITA's official stance. They're essentially telling the public, look, we already regulate parts of Ghana's ICT ecosystem. This is definitely not some sudden digital takeover. They argue that a huge chunk of this panic is honestly just a misunderstanding of the existing frameworks. However, we have to note that for many of the critics and creators in the space, this explanation, it hasn't exactly put out the fire. The fears are still very, very real.
Section 4. The Global Tech Debate, a Worldwide Shift.
Because really, when you zoom out, it all comes down to this one vital question. How much control should governments actually have over digital spaces? You see, this isn't just about local licensing fees in Ghana anymore. It mirrors a massive, worldwide philosophical battle over the very future of digital freedom. From regulating social media algorithms to artificial intelligence, governments all over the globe are desperately trying to figure out their exact role in an increasingly digital world.
And let's be fair, there are totally valid arguments for why governments feel the urgent need to lay down these standards. Regulation is heavily driven by things like national security, fraud prevention, getting a handle on cybercrime, and of course, consumer protection. I mean, as technologies like fintech and digital identity systems get completely woven into our daily lives, establishing some level of accountability isn't just a nice-to-have for governments, it's practically a critical responsibility.
But on the flip side, the opposing fears are equally valid. Critics are sounding the alarm that heavy-handed rules can way too easily cross the line. The risks here? We're talking potential surveillance, censorship, a severe bottleneck on innovation, reduced privacy, and ultimately a straight-up abuse of power. When legal language is super broad or kind of vague, citizens naturally get worried that these regulations could be weaponized, either to stifle free speech or just to lock out independent creators who simply don't have the cash or lawyers to navigate a massive bureaucracy.
And this brilliantly illustrates the incredibly difficult balancing act that basically every modern government is struggling with right now. On one hand, Goal 1, protect citizens and regulate digital systems. On the other hand, Goal 2, avoid crushing innovation and digital freedom. Too little regulation and you've got the Wild West, chaos and vulnerability. But too much regulation, you build walls that completely slow down the future. Finding that perfect equilibrium is honestly one of the absolute greatest policy challenges of our time.
Finally, Section 5. The ecosystem's future, Ghana's tech growth.
Bringing it all back home, the reason this debate in Ghana is so unbelievably intense is simple. Technology represents opportunity. For so many young Ghanaians, the internet completely lowered the barrier to entry. You don't need a massive pile of startup capital to succeed anymore. For them, technology isn't just a fun hobby, it is literal economic survival. It is the future of work. So anything, and I mean anything, perceived as threatening that accessible opportunity immediately becomes deeply controversial and fiercely protected.
So whether you lean towards supporting stronger government regulation or you totally fear the loss of digital freedom, one thing is absolutely undeniable. Technology is no longer separate from our politics, our society, or our everyday lives. And so we're left with this ultimate question, one that is absolutely going to define the next decade of digital growth in Ghana and far beyond. How do you regulate technology without slowing down the future?